Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia. WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game odds on everyday major sports, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
I've seen teams pack it in, losing their best player, surrender. They have not the mentality of a surrendering team.
Oh, what a shot by Booker, hanging in the air and then going around the defender to bank it home. Wow. That's one you got to see again.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
10 games in a row, my friend. I'm doing pretty well right now. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, too. I'll be honest. I've been sick for a while.
Yep.
We're coming at you guys much later than normal.
Apologies.
Usually we would have an episode and a Patreon episode by this time of the week. I apologize, but I feel better now. Well enough to record. I'm sorry if I cough or make some weird noise at some point during this podcast, but we appreciate your guys' patience. Happy to be back. Nice that the Suns won so many games between the last time we recorded and right now. It's been a really fun win streak so far.
And gave us a nice round number to come back and record on.
Exactly.
Just 10 in a row. I already know what your title for the episode is going to be because we never think about it until afterwards. It's just perfect.
Yeah, it's very nice. And we have a lot to talk about because it's been enough games. It's still very small sample sizes to work with, but enough games that we like to take some sort of stock in the team by looking at statistics, and then we pitch them back and forth. People who have listened to this podcast for a long time will recognize this format for us. Sam and I separately look up stats, and then we just read them to each other, and then we try to give context to those stats and do analysis based on what they say. Keep in mind that we know that it's still relatively small sample sizes right now. We already know. So we know this isn't indicative of the entire season. We just find them interesting at this point of the season, and we like to keep track of them now to see how they change in the future.
Because I know not everyone out there is a stats person, even if you are a regular listener to this podcast, you should know there's somewhat of a reputation for stat-based analysis, I would think, at this point.
Yeah.
We also know, you don't have to tell us, that stats are not the be-all, end-all. We know.
Right.
It's just, at this point in the season, it's just about trying to identify trends and patterns, maybe some things that are a little bit different from last year, and trying to suss out what's real and what's not. And, it's not life or death. Mm-hmm. Nothing is at this point. But yeah, that's the general goal here. We know that certain stats mean less than others, and not everything has to be blown out of proportion. So go in with that open mind, and I think we'll have a good time here.
I think to some extent it's about setting a baseline too. Like we're understanding where they're at now and where they can build from. Because last season, which is the first time that we did these episodes throughout the season, I think we did 3. We saw a trend with the statistics. Where they started at the beginning of the season, where they ended at the end of the season, was this drastically different thing when it came to a lot of these stats, and it ended up painting a really interesting picture of the season. It also gave us context to look at what we're looking at so far this season and apply it to what we learned from these stats last season. And I think for me at least, and I know I'll talk to you about what you saw, it put me in a different sort of mode as far as thinking about these stats, understanding what we saw last season and looking at these stats this season. I'll start, and then we'll just go back and forth. What I wanted to do first is talk about the 10-game win streak. So the Phoenix Suns are currently on a 10-game win streak. They could extend that to 11 games against a team, a Mavericks team that may still be missing Luka Doncic tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday. The game, once again, on ESPN. On Friday, the last time the Phoenix Suns had a 10-game win streak was March 14th, 2010 to April 2nd, 2010, which, by the way, was a nice time to go on a win streak considering it's right before the playoffs. It's just a few weeks before the playoffs started for that 2010 team. I think you can guess this. Who do you think was the leading scorer in that 10-game win streak for the Phoenix Suns in 2010?
No doubt it was Amari Stoudemire.
Correct. Amari Stoudemire, 27 points, 9 rebounds, and this is crazy. In that stretch, in his 27 points, he was shooting just 14.5 field goal attempts per game to get to 27 points. How insane is that?
Yeah. he was nuts, man. The starting lineup from that crew is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah,
though, because
I got
it was
more.
not. Yep, keep going.
10.7 free throw attempts per game in that 10-game win streak for Amari Stoudemire. He could not be stopped. Basically, if he got into the paint and he had the ball in his hands, he was either dunking or he was being fouled. That, by the way, the 2010 year was also the year where he really opened up his game with a mid-range game. That mid-range game, of course, allowed him to just catch it and shoot if he was open for mid-range, but if they played up on him, of course, you know what Amari was going to do. Take a single dribble, go directly towards the basket, get fouled or dunk. The second leading scorer, I'm assuming you could probably guess this too if you'd like to, for that team. Do you want to guess?
Well, there's a couple options technically. I guess. Well, is it the obvious choice or the not obvious choice?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know what you would consider the obvious choice.
I mean, the obvious choice is probably Steve Nash, a former MVP. I was going to say maybe Jason Richardson.
It's
came
Jason
in at second
Richardson.
here. Okay,
Jason
there
Richardson.
you go. Yeah, he kind of filled in that role during those seasons.
He took a lot of shots.
He was only there for like 2.5 years, right?
Yeah.
But he filled in that, I don't want to say Sean Marion role because he was really just an offensive player. I'm trying. The Suns kind of didn't have. He was kind of like a Joe Johnson, another Joe Johnson.
Traditional shooting guard.
Traditional shooting guard, yeah. But a volume shooter more than just like a spot up guy.
Yeah, very little assists, but a lot of shots. 19.8 points per game for that win streak for Jason Richardson. So quite a bit. I mean, that's like higher than his average on the season, basically 20 points per game. Steve Nash averaged 14 points, 10.7 assists, and 4 rebounds on 50, 53, 88 shooting splits. So that's 50% from the field, 53% from 3,
only 88%
from the line. Yeah, only
scrub.
88. By the way,
kind of a scrub.
Okay, 14 points a game, 10.7 assists, 4 rebounds. During this current win streak, Chris Paul is averaging 15 points, 10.4 assists, and 4 rebounds. Almost exactly the same stats as Steve Nash in those two win streaks. The difference is Steve Nash was one of the most efficient players of all time, whereas Chris Paul finds ways to be efficient. During this win streak, not as good as he normally is. 48% from the field, still good. 33% from the three-point line and 80% from the line. With Chris Paul, what's kind of miraculous in this specific win streak, that 48% of the field includes almost no layups at all. So like that efficiency is just an insanely high efficiency on mid-range shots. On the current Suns win streak, Devin Booker averaged 23, 6, and 5 on 18 field goal attempts per game, which is very efficient as well. And then Ayton, even though Ayton was just in 4 of those games, 18.5 points in those games, 64.8% field goal percentage. Ayton, very, very efficient. Do you have a guess? Do you want to even try to guess what team ended the original 2010 Suns streak?
Yeah, I have no idea. Was it a good team? Was it a bad team?
It was a bad team.
In 2010?
It was the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, okay.
Led by Brandon Jennings and his 23
Jesus.
points. That's who ended the original 10-game win streak for the Phoenix Suns. So for the first time in over 11 years, the Phoenix Suns are on a 10-game win streak, the longest win streak of Devin Booker's career. Previously, it was 8 games in the bubble or 9 games in the playoffs, depending on which one you count.
Was that the same year that Brandon Jennings dropped 50? Because I know he did that one year. And I wonder...
wasn't that his rookie year? Or like he was really young when he dropped 50,
his rookie year, I think Brandon Jennings versus Steph was a conversation, which is so funny to think about now. Like, now
that
I'm
would
looking.
be his rookie year then, yeah.
Brandon Jennings is 32 today.
Wow.
And he's ancient history in the NBA. It's just, it really is a testament to like not just Steph, but like any star who's still kicking it at like 33 plus.
Yeah.
How ridiculous it is to really last in the NBA that long.
Well,
then you have guys like Udonis Haslem, by the way, who played minutes yesterday. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. I think it also illustrates just how difficult it is to go on a 10-game win streak. It's very rare just in general, and it does not matter to me how good the teams are that you're beating, because 10 games in a row is really difficult no matter what. The Suns really only had 2 teams that were over 500 in their win streak, and so they are going to have some tests going forward. If Luka Doncic comes back, that'll be the first major test for them outside of the Cavs, who were playing well when the Suns beat them. But Brandon Jennings and the Bucks beat the Suns. If every team could easily beat bad teams, there would be a lot more 10-game win streaks in the NBA.
And how
it's
about
just really rare?
How about this for a coincidence, by the way? Who, I just looked it up, Brandon Jennings had 55 points in a game in his rookie year. Who was it against? The Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry in that game, 14 points on 6 of 9 shooting. Not bad. Brandon Jennings, 55 points on 21 of 34 from the field, 7 of 8 from deep. So I think at the time it was a conversation.
Yeah. I mean,
just
if
like
you score 55 points in your rookie year, you think it's all going to go up from there, and
That's
it just
wild.
doesn't always go up. All right, you want to give me one of your stats? That's all I got for the 10-game win streak.
Yeah, let's get into it. So I want to talk specifically. Obviously, they've been the best at this also during the 10-game win streak, but I want to talk about the Suns in the clutch because just as an ode to it, it's been insane. Like Mike, it has been legitimately insane. I'm going to read to you the team stats for the Phoenix Suns during the clutch according to the NBA's website. The NBA's website, I think we've talked about this stat a million times before, but for those who don't know, it defines clutch situations as the scores within 5 points, 5 minutes or less in the game. So between up 5 and down 5. In those situations so far this season, the Suns are shooting 65% from the field as a team, 46% from deep as a team. That is a 74% true shooting, which would be like the most efficient player of all time, except the entire team is doing it with an offensive rating of 139 points per 100 possessions and a defensive rating of 78 points per 100 possessions. So obviously, this is on a small sample size. They've only played in a handful of clutch games, yada, yada. You can't extrapolate that out. But what these stats are basically saying is that so far, the Suns have been the pinnacle of the best possible execution you could ever see in the clutch. They are playing like a team that goes out there, and if you extrapolated, they would blow out every team they play by 60 points over the course of a full game. That's what they're playing like in the clutch. And to talk specifically about guys, because obviously we know who these shots are going to, we've watched the games. Booker is 9 for 12 from the field. Chris Paul is 5 for 8 from the field. So even though, like you were talking about, maybe not his most efficient stretch for the 10-game stretch in general, he's done it in the clutch. And he also has 9 assists to only 1 turnover in his clutch play. And then the shooters have shot well. That's Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder. The big men have finished, whether it's a game where DeAndre Ayton starts, JaVale McGee starts, Frank Kaminsky goes off. It's nuts. Like, regression is to be expected here with this stat, so this is not one of the stats that I'm saying is predictive. No one shoots 65% in clutch situations over a full season. However, just to highlight how insane they are right now, I mean, they really do just flip a switch in the fourth quarter in a way that I haven't seen this team ever do in the past. That's what's been going on for the past couple weeks.
When the season was getting ready to start, we commonly mentioned the word continuity. And when we talked about continuity, what we expected is that the Suns would come out of the gate playing really well together because they were used to each other. We're going to get into some stats later, for me at least, that show that that's not exactly true. But where it has been true is in the clutch. When things start to get tight, this team knows where each other's going to be. They understand who's going to take the shots, and they've done the right things. I'm excited to see them tested against teams like the Warriors, the Nets, the Bulls, who've been very, very good lately, the Clippers, who've been very, very good as well, although up and down a little bit more, and see how they do in those situations as well, because for teams that they're clearly better than, that they're outclassing, it's obvious at times in the game. It's incredibly obvious at the end of the games. And I do have a stat to go with this, actually. We were talking about before we recorded that we might overlap here. For players who have at least 5 games where they've played in the clutch and have attempted at least 1.5 field goals in those games, Devin Booker is number 1 in field goal percentage at 75% in that 9 for 12 that you said. He's also number 2 in three-point percentage at 60%. So he's essentially, as far as people who've actually played in clutch situations, the best player in the league so far in the clutch. Interestingly, Steph Curry, as far as these parameters go, which are, I think there were like 30-something players, is last.
No way.
At 18% in clutch situations shooting shots. For the record, I know people want to know this. Zach LaVine is 27th in that statistic. Now, here's one thing I'll say. Steph is launching threes at all points of the game, and that's a good thing because that's what he should do. But I think there is something to be said about just raw field goal percentage on three-pointers compared to other shots at the very, very end of games. Because, yes, the analytics say over the course of a game, three-point shots are more valuable, even at a lower percentage. When you need one bucket at the end of the game, you just need it to go in. And that's it. So I think Steph Curry and LaVine in this percentage are shooting a lot more threes. That's not always good. Look, if you're down 3 and there's 10 seconds left, shoot a 3. Of course, it makes sense. But there are times where you got to find a better shot here. But just to illustrate it, of course, Chris Paul's been good. And I think the rest of the shooters have been good. But Devin Booker alone has been essentially, so far, the best player in the clutch offensively this season.
Just with what you were saying about threes, like I just couldn't agree more. All of the mathematicians who I respect have said something similar in the past, that there's this balance to be drawn between the expected value of shooting threes versus shooting mid-range shots, which oftentimes good three-point shooters, higher expected value. But then you get down to the last 2 minutes of a game, and it's about variance. It's a question of variance. You can't afford to have a 30, 35% shot sometimes versus a 45% shot when it's a one-possession game. So yeah, it's just it makes sense. And it's all the more reason this is not to discredit Steph at all, because he's been phenomenal, and
and those stats will go up,
and is in the MVP conversation right now for sure. But it's more just about one more reason why building a well-rounded roster that has the ability to attack from 3, but also get to your spots in the mid-range can benefit you when you get into those situations. And that's not always something that teams are given, or GMs more specifically, are given appropriate credit for.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Devin Booker, one of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA, of course. But like, just to think about it, if it's not making sense what we're saying here, if you're down by one, and you shoot a shot that's like a 35% pull-up three-pointer, or you shoot a shot that's a 45% pull-up mid-range shot, the 35% pull-up three-pointer over the course of the game is more valuable by points per possession. But if you're talking about winning a game with 1 second left, shooting a shot, you win the game 10% more when you shoot that mid-range shot. It's just raw field goal percentage does matter just at the very, very, very end of the shot clock, at the very end of the game.
I have a question for you, and
yes.
I don't blame you. Do you have the stats up if I ask for where a certain player ranks? Okay, that's fine.
I might remember, though.
I'd be curious where Kevin Durant is.
I think he was somewhere in the middle of that group, but relatively high, like in the upper half.
We're talking about mid-range shots, and you were talking about you'd be interested in seeing them go up against the Warriors, but also the Nets. The Nets are on the opposite ends of the spectrum right now, where KD is unconscious on mid-range shots.
Yeah.
He can't from everywhere.
Yeah.
No, that's true. With the exception of a couple games, from everywhere. But he can't miss from the mid-range.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that game's going to be a lot of fun. Again, I'm going to that game in Brooklyn in a week.
That's right. Yeah.
Really excited for that.
Yes, that'll be nice. Yeah, and surprisingly, relatively high, and this is credit to the mid-range theory here. Dennis Schroeder was actually pretty high on this list, like in the top 3, top 4. Jokic was pretty high on the list. Jokic has the ability to get to the rim and can shoot really high percentages from mid-range. Of course, still a good three-point shooter, was really high on the list. Paul George, who can do it all, is also relatively high on that list. So I think the guys who have the biggest bag, the guys who can shoot the most types of shots, generally I think will be the highest on that list. But yeah, I mean, clutch play by the team. Clutch play by Devin Booker, which I think is nice because he had a down year last year when it came to clutch. This is more what we're used to when it comes to Devin Booker and this team. I know I read out one of my stats there, so do you want me to just read another one since it was essentially the same?
I think you have more than me, so yeah let's go with that.
Yeah. Okay. I brought this up on multiple episodes, pace.
Perfect. Yep.
And we wanted to talk about it on this one. Suns pace. The Suns are currently 4th in the NBA in pace. That means they're the 4th fastest team in the NBA. The pace is 101.9, which is a measurement of total possessions essentially during a game. It's the fastest pace of Chris Paul's career. And it's like the 3rd or 4th fastest pace of Devin Booker's career. The early Suns teams for Devin Booker played very, very fast. But this is significantly fast for Chris Paul. The Suns were essentially in the bottom 5 the majority of last year. I think crept up to like 23, 24 towards the end of the season when they tried to pick up the pace a little bit. But there is clear intention to push the ball up the floor. It's not a coincidence that they're this fast. And I'd like to hear what you think about this. I know you were a little unconvinced at first.
Yeah, so you brought it up. That's okay. I expected you to bring that up. It is important to admit when you are wrong. And in the first couple weeks of the season, I definitely was like, I don't believe it. Because I don't. I mean,
Which was fair. It's early in the season.
Thank you. It is fair because let's be honest, as you know, someone who watched every game just like you did last year and the year before, there was no reason to believe. Also, in the history of Monty Williams' coaching career, there has been no reason to believe that he would ever push the pace because he never has. Up until this point, his teams with the Pelicans were very slow too.
Chris Paul
and
too.
Granted, yeah, and Chris Paul. And the offense he runs with the Suns is much different than the offense he ran with the Pelicans. He came back to his first head coaching gig in 5 years. He understood where the league went, how it had modernized essentially, and he created a system that reflected that. But still, when he came to Phoenix, even when he had Ricky Rubio and Aaron Baines and Kelly Oubre in that first season, slow team that didn't necessarily capitalize on transition points the way you would expect them to. At least they were, maybe middle of the pack. So yeah, this was a surprise. I didn't expect it, but here we are. Enough time has passed now that I can say this is for real. They really did bring an emphasis on this going into the season. And I guess the only other question that leaves is, well, is it working or not? Obviously, you look at the results right now. I would say it's working.
Yeah.
Does it have an effect on guys throughout the course of a season and being able to load manage, essentially? That might be an interesting question. But so far, I don't think the Suns are really playing anyone enough minutes for that to be a major concern of mine.
Yeah. I agree. And here's, I think, why it was smart to do that this year. Being able to run essentially the most or one of the most efficient half-court offenses is a major, major strength for this team. We just read the clutch stats. This team does not run the entire game. If the Suns are up towards the end of the game, they might spend the entire fourth quarter or at least half of the fourth quarter milking the clock for all it's worth. And that means that actually drags the pace down. That means the majority of the game, they're even faster in the pace. And I think this stat actually shows that. They're only 19th in fast break points per game, even though they're 4th in pace. They can score in transition. They're incredibly efficient in transition so far. But that is not their meat and potatoes, if you will. They are getting into their offense quickly, but they're not always just running to the rim and trying to score right away. They might get into the offense quickly and run things fast. That's what Monty likes. But towards the end of the game, they will stretch it out. And they got used to that last year by playing a lot of time at that relatively slow pace. That means, like some young teams that will play fast and then try to slow it down at the end of the season, and then the whole offense breaks apart. That's not happening to the Suns. They are still able to do both of those things incredibly efficiently, and that's the mark of a really good team. And I think if they tried to run too fast last year, they may not have both of those things down this year. I think it worked out really well for them.
Continuity, baby.
Yep. Another part of this.
Name of the game.
Booker is averaging. This is part of this. It's not a separate stat. I know. I'm reading more stats now. Booker is averaging 2 full rebounds more.
No, shut up.
Okay, we'll save that one.
Well,
Go ahead,
I just want to do it now.
Oh, do yours. I'm sure you have something related to that. Let's jump right into it.
So, I don't know if you knew this, Mike, but Booker is actually averaging almost 2 full rebounds per game. More than he did last year.
Than any point of his career.
Than any point of his career. So, yes, this was one of my stats. Devin Booker is rebounding low-key becoming, and I feel like, even a lot of people in the Sun sphere haven't necessarily noticed this. I've seen a couple of people bring it up, so credit to those of you who have.
I'll take
6.2 rebounds per game is the highest of his career. He's never averaged more than 4.5 even. So, it's almost like a 50% increase over his next best year. He's low-key becoming one of the best rebounders for a player of his size in the NBA. Right. And specifically, where I think you were going with this before I demanded that I steal it back from you, was there is benefit. Rebounding is interesting, right? Because I try not to label anything necessarily an empty stat. But we have, you can't deny, we have seen examples of players in the NBA in the modern era. I'm not going to name any names. Actually, I will name names. Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic, we all know them.
Yeah.
Where rebounding is kind of, there's an emptiness to
Steph Curry at times.
At times. Steph has the transition pull-up threat, which makes him so scary if he gets it. But with these other guys, it's like, it's kind of just there to aid the triple-double, but it doesn't necessarily do anything. Booker here, as the Suns try and put an emphasis on pushing the pace, he gets more defensive rebounds. He's able to push it and get into their offense much quicker. However, I would also like to point out his offensive rebound rate is literally double of what it was last season. So this is not, part of it is a defensive rebounding thing. He's collecting the ball earlier and then he's pushing. But the other half of it is he's making a more concerted effort to attack the offensive glass too. So just in general, overall, small sample, whatever, but Devin Booker is having by far the best rebounding season of his career. And in this particular case, I don't think it's empty at all. I think it is objectively helping the Suns' offense all around.
Yeah. Luka, Russ, even Booker at this point, they're not going out there and jumping over guys and getting rebounds out of their area like Dennis Rodman. Their guys are boxing out for them, and instead of standing at half court, they're standing under the rim. It's basically a different strategy here. The idea being, if Booker's man tries to pick him up, above the 3-point line, closer to half court, then Booker can use that speed to get by him and get fouled. I told you actually when you were here, because it happens so much, that Book's most effective transition play is getting fouled. It really is, because I think people still to this day underestimate his speed, and his ability to pull up from mid-range I think has a big effect on this. He basically slightly hesitates in mid-range and then just blows by him, and then it gets hit in the hip. And then he gets free throws out of that every time. He's gotten very good at putting the ball up in the glass, sometimes even gets it in those scenarios, and he gets free throws out of those. The big difference is, instead of waiting for the ball at half court, which he'll still do, of course every guard does, he's in there in the mix. He's trying to get that board. He's trying to push the pace with the ball in his hands right away. And it's led to a drastic increase in his rebounding. And it is effort-wise, and it's also other players on the floor sacrificing essentially their rebounds because they know it'll help the offense on the other end of the floor, something Steven Adams was famous for with Russell Westbrook, just giving the rebound essentially to Russ and allowing him to run it down the floor. I think it's really smart, and I kind of wish that it was something that we had talked about before, because I just didn't expect it. And I think he's very capable of it, because I think he has speed, he has good hops, and also good awareness, court awareness, and it just makes a lot of sense, and it helps the pace out a lot, I think.
Yeah, I think possibly because we were just so used to, and he's dominating the ball again in many respects, but we were so used to the Chris Paul-centric offense last year, and then Booker gets to his spots, you have him in those elbow sets, running off pin downs and whatever, you'll get him his mid-range shots, but we weren't necessarily used to that division of labor, and I feel like we are starting to see it a little bit more this year, where it's more of a point of emphasis. So
right.
They've come a long way, and also, this should not be surprising, because we expected this to be the case all along when we acquired Chris Paul. But we know for a fact that last year there was a long stretch of time where the Suns basketball was not being played. They were not playing their best basketball with those two on the floor together. And that is just, it's not at all the case anymore. I don't know if this is one of your stats, so maybe I should shut up at this point. But just the net ratings, I can just say generically, the net ratings with Devin Booker and Chris Paul on the floor together are so much better than when it's just one of them, or of course when it's neither of them. So yeah. They've totally figured it out.
Yeah. Just to read it out, in 5 games this year, he has either 8 or 9 rebounds so far, And that's just something that just was not the case before. It just wasn't happening that often. He has 25 games total in his career with over 8 rebounds, and 5 of them have come this season. So it's clearly more of an effort to do that, and I think it'll be something that continues for him. And it's also something that sort of, it just bolsters his numbers for those box score watchers. So reputation-wise, and you know what? Yep. You know what else it does? It affects advanced stats.
It does.
And isn't that stupid?
Yeah, it affects.
Isn't that dumb?
It's going to have a big effect. Actually, sometimes people have asked in the past, why is Devin Booker's VORP bad?
Right.
I think this is a niche topic of conversation that probably doesn't interest the majority of our listeners, so I'm going to spend a very small amount of time on it. I could say in the past we've discussed there's like a lot of reasons for it that are kind of implicit, but definitely one of those big reasons is you grab more rebounds, your BPM, which is the Basketball Reference Advanced Stat, the box plus minus, heavily favors guys who grab rebounds, whether they matter or not, whether they're contested rebounds or uncontested rebounds, like in the case of Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams for all those years. So if you just do something as simple as grab more defensive rebounds, that type of stat is going to consider you a better defensive player in kind of a weird way. And then, all of your advanced stats get boosted that way. So we may see that effect as well.
It's the all-encompassing advanced stats that get boosted by this. Like, not necessarily net rating or something like that, but the VORPs, the Raptors, the LeBrons, the ones that are named after guys often. Those are the ones that get boosted by that, and oftentimes centers are at the top of it. Somebody like Jokic, who is across the board just like leading all of these advanced stats, deservedly so, incredibly efficient, good passer, but also has all those rebounds added into it, which I think adds to his case, which when you compare to Steph Curry, like if you're talking about the MVP race or something, it's kind of dumb to just factor in those because he's the guy that gets the rebounds. Like it's just not part of the,
With Jokic, it's a little bit different, I think. I mean, you're right. With Jokic, I would argue it's a little bit different just because he's shooting like 60% from the field. Like he also couldn't be having a better offensive season so far this year.
My point is
he does get that
separate it. I think if you're a voter, if you're someone deciding on that, you have to separate the advanced stats and understand the context of those advanced stats when factoring them in. Some of them, I think, factor that in as well. All right, how about I'll read one of mine now.
You should.
Okay. We're talking about net rating. I'm going to get right into it. But I'm gonna do some lineup stats now.
Okay.
Out of lineups that have played at least 60 minutes, we're dealing with small sample sizes here. So yes, it's a small sample size, but that's all we have.
Take a drink every time you hear us say it in this episode.
Out of lineups that have played at least 60 minutes, number 3 in net rating is the starters with Frank Kaminsky at plus 25. At plus 25. How crazy is that? Essentially, the offensive rating for that lineup would be the best offensive rating of all time by like an extreme amount, which of course points to regression and that it's not necessarily that good. But it also, to me, is pretty remarkable to just have that high of a net rating with any lineup for the team. But here's the kicker. Number 4 in the entire NBA, the starters with JaVale McGee at plus 23.6. How wild is that? Those two currently.
What are you trying to say?
Well, here's the other part. I'll get to it. The next lineup that the Suns even have on these over 60 minutes is the starters with Ayton. Currently a minus 5.6. It's in the negative so far. For those who don't know what net rating is, it's a measurement of essentially, are you getting outscored when you're on the floor, or are you scoring more than the opponents when you're on the floor? So currently, the starters with Frank, the starters with JaVale, are 2 of the best lineups in the league so far, which of course is not sustainable. But also on the other side of that, the starters with DeAndre Ayton are getting beat. Now, we talked about continuity earlier. What we expected, you and I, or we hoped for, really, is that the continuity would play into the beginning of the season, sort of regardless of the time that was on the floor. It's currently not doing that. But I was talking about when we were previewing this segment that the context added to that is the Suns were in the negative with DeAndre Ayton for the first few months of the season last season. For whatever reason, whether it be conditioning or I'm not sure what it is, they got much, much better throughout the season. So the Suns have just won 10 in a row. But so far this season, the starters that all returned with DeAndre Ayton in the lineup are getting beat while they're on the floor. They won 10 in a row, and they are not clicking. Like, they can get so much better than they're playing so far. They've done it sort of on the back of bench players playing out of their mind in a way that's unsustainable, and they have an obvious growth path to get better with DeAndre Ayton on the floor, and this team could be even better even though they've already won 10 games in a row. Pretty crazy, right?
I mean, it's obvious for those who have watched. You just look at the way teams like the Pelicans, the Rockets in one of their games, the Timberwolves, the Trailblazers was, you mean early in the season or during the streak?
Well, when Ayton played, I assume. Assuming you're talking about defense.
No. When Ayton played, no, not quite. I'm just saying all of these teams, not good teams, even in games you won, have had leads. There have only been a couple of games that were wire-to-wire victories. Like that game against Memphis was great. But for the most part, it hasn't been like games against Memphis. It's been allowing these teams to come in with really poor stretches, and a lot of those poor stretches have been the starters getting off to really slow starts in the first quarter and the third quarter. And yes, that has been with DeAndre Ayton more than the other two centers so far from what we've seen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at these stats. You and I think, have talked a lot about this online. It's something that I had hoped to make a video of, and I think we might be getting to the point where it might not be as relevant anymore.
Might not be relevant anymore.
They're figuring it out a little bit more now.
Well, we needed to capitalize on the Frank 31-point wave, I think. And when we didn't drop the video then.
I blame, I got sick. I blame this cold. But what's happening is essentially a lot of teams are just trapping Chris Paul and Devin Booker a lot with DeAndre Ayton on the floor. And the fact is, I watched a lot of film in preparation for that video, so I can explain it a little bit here. When they trap with Frank Kaminsky, Chris Paul in particular, and Devin Booker, but Chris Paul more specifically, trusts Frank Kaminsky to give him the ball even behind the three-point line if a trap is high enough. And then Frank Kaminsky does what he does with that, whether that be sort of his like stumbling, bumbling drive to the rim, passes to shooters, pass fakes, pull-up shots from three if he wants to do that. Whatever it is, Frank will do that. JaVale as well. JaVale catches it. We know what he's going to do when he catches it. He's going to attack the rim no matter what. Now, I think what some people might be expecting me to say about DeAndre Ayton is that when DeAndre Ayton catches it in that area, he doesn't know what to do. But the reality is they don't give it to him there at all. And I watched so much film of this, so I promise you this is real. What happens essentially is Chris Paul, Devin Booker get trapped. If the only option in the pass is DeAndre Ayton in the middle of the floor above the free throw line, like between the free throw line and the three-point line, 90% of the time they just reset and run a screen again. And when you reset and run a screen again, what you're doing now is you're running your offense with much less time on the shot clock. And that means that you have less time to do what you want to do. They're trying to get those screens to land, which I think is really important for DeAndre Ayton to land those screens in these scenarios where they're trapping. Try and force the trap to be late, which allows Devin Booker or Chris Paul to be only one man instead of two, and it also can allow him to slip to the basket a little easier. That's the main thing that they're looking at here. They don't trust DeAndre Ayton in that scenario. We've seen him do it in the past, but probably for good reason.
But you understand, it sounds like what you're saying, and I know this is not what you're saying, but I want to force you to explain the distinction.
Sure, yeah.
It sounds like you're saying feed Ayton.
No.
Why are you not saying that? But you understand what I mean, right? Like, it sounds
absolutely.
like you're saying... Okay, here's the thing. It's a very logical conclusion for someone to hear what you just said. It's a logical conclusion that Ayton doesn't get the ball in those situations. For whatever reason, they're passing it to Frank and JaVale in those same situations. So they should just do the same thing for Ayton.
Yeah.
What's your explanation for why that is not happening?
What the Suns need to do when DeAndre Ayton is on the floor is not get trapped above the three-point line, essentially. Because if the traps can force Chris Paul or Devin Booker further and further out, that's when DeAndre Ayton lands in no-man land. And this is why the screen is so important. They don't trust him in that scenario because, one, he can't shoot three-point shots. Two, he doesn't feel confident enough to dribble currently. And I'll be honest, if you want to say that he can't pass from that scenario, I don't think the film shows that. I think he's actually done a really good job at catching the ball in places and making the right passes so far this season to shooters. Not really capable of passing to cutters yet. I based on what I've seen, it wouldn't surprise me if that actually did come a little bit later. But right now, I think he's actually making the right passes to shooters. What the Suns need to do is ensure that when traps are coming, whether that be from the screens or running plays from different areas of the floor, like empty corner sets, is that the guards need to penetrate beyond the three-point line. If the guards can get beyond the three-point line and DeAndre Ayton finds a clear path to the rim closer to the basket, he becomes a lot more effective because when he catches the ball in those scenarios, there's a lot more options. He can post up, he can shoot the hook, he can catch a lob, or he can pass to shooters. If he's further and further away from the basket, it's the Suns and it's him in some cases because he needs to screen. It's up to them to find other ways to do it. And the simple solution, I think, for a lot of people listening is, can't DeAndre Ayton learn to do a lot of the things Frank can do? Eventually, yeah, but that's a lot. Like, Frank has a lot of skills in his bag that he's capable of doing.
We've said it before. Frank is in the NBA for his skills.
Entirely
he's not in the
skills.
He's not in the NBA because of his athleticism, because he doesn't have the athleticism of an NBA player, really.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. So his skills are actually really good. Like, you cannot make fun of them because they're good.
Absolutely. And look, DeAndre Ayton can do so much that Frank can't do, like catch lobs. I've never seen Frank catch a lob and dunk it. That's definitely not going to happen. So, as far as the things they can do in the short term is they need to find ways to penetrate. Ayton needs to ensure that those screens land if they're trapping a lot. And that's on the guards as much as it is on DeAndre Ayton. In the long term, Ayton needs to come up with some moves from that. And I think what he's been testing out early this season is floaters on guys that are coming off the corners, that he could float it right over them. He's got the touch to do that. I don't mind that. But that, I think, is the area of his game that they need to get better at. And I think that 5.6 number, they got good at attacking traps last season. They're going to get better at it this season. The Suns will be absolutely fine in that lineup, I think.
I will point out the floater, I don't hate it. It's definitely not going to get you to the free throw line anymore often. Remember,
right.
We started this episode talking about Amari averaging 10 free throws a game over that stretch.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not fair at this point to compare Amari and DeAndre because, honestly, at this point with what we know about each guy, I feel like there were so many comparisons drawn between them at the very beginning of Ayton's career here.
Right.
But now people should know better. They're completely
Nothing
opposite.
Alike. Yeah.
Nothing alike. Opposite players. But yeah, the floater's not going to do any better for him in that situation.
I mean, the other option is shooting. If he can shoot really well from that mid-range area.
Yeah, of course. My next stat is kind of related to that, so I'm ready to move on to it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about the other side of it because there's this relationship that we always see between the roll gravity of a guy like DeAndre Ayton, who obviously when defenses are choosing to trap, they're paying a certain amount of attention to DeAndre Ayton as well, who most of the time is going to be the obvious open man as a result of that defensive scheme. The other side of that is, where are you guarding the shooters? How are you guarding the shooters? And there's a seesaw effect between the roll gravity, the roll man, and the shooters and the shooting gravity. And it's one thing to say, like when you just look at the random, the overall 3-point percentage for the Suns this year, the Suns are shooting the ball solidly well. They're not shooting super well, but they're shooting fine. When you look more specifically, though, I think what's kind of interesting is this. This year, the Suns are third in the NBA in corner shooting at 44.8%. Do you want to guess where they are in above the break shooting?
I'm guessing in the 20s.
Yep.
Yeah.
23rd. They are third in corner shooting at 45%, basically. They are, which is like amazing. Just think about that on a points per possession basis. Yeah. It's an amazing shot.
Yeah.
23rd in above the break shooting on 31.7%. And here's what I'll say. Normally, like when you look at basically every team in the league, it's normal to see a difference between those two shots for a couple of obvious reasons. The corner is shorter, so it's easier. It's more likely to be wide open. There's more likely to be like a bailout pass kind of at the end of a possession where the defense leaves a corner shooter open. Shots from above the break are more likely to be a little bit more contested. And shots from above the break are much more likely to be pull-ups, whereas you don't really see guys pulling up from corners. Sometimes they do
really
side steps. Yeah, they do side
steps. Just Chris Paul, really.
Yeah, Jay Crowder might sidestep like every once in a while, but for the most part, they're just catch and shoot. So it's normal for every team to have basically, 5 or 6% better on their corner shooting than their above the break shooting. But it's not normal to have a 14% difference, and that's what the Suns have right now. That is a major, major difference. And so part of what you can say is you look at some of the guys on this roster who shot really well from above the break last year. Chris Paul has struggled. He's below 30% on above the break threes. Cam Payne has struggled. He's above. He's below. I meant to say below 30%. And Cam Payne is also below 30% on above the break threes. Mikal Bridges doesn't really take those, but he's not shooting super well. There's
Ayton
one more
does.
example who Ayton does, and he obviously doesn't shoot them super well. There's one more example who I'm forgetting. Booker is honestly fine.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
Cam Johnson.
Yeah.
Cam Johnson is the other guy shooting below 30% to open the season on above the break threes. So basically what you have to do here is you have to decide, are we on the cusp of regression, positive regression to the mean here, where Cam Payne is going to find his shot, Cam Johnson is going to find his shot, Chris Paul is going to find his shot? Because if the answer is no, if you go another 10 games and the answer is no, here's the concern. How it relates back to what you were just talking about. We've seen in the past, if that math prevails, defenses will trap the ball handler, but in addition to trapping the ball handler, they're going to stay on corner shooters. And we've seen this in the past. They're not going to allow Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder to take those corner threes that the math is saying right now they are very, very good at. So what does that leave? Obviously, they're still going to have a tag man. They're just going to play him a little bit looser. And so the only options that the Suns have in that type of offense is run their offense through Ayton short rolls, which we just said, not super comfortable at this point. Or you make a difficult pass. You know, sometimes there'll be a guy, you know, say if it's Chris Paul or Devin Booker getting trapped on the wing, they could pass back, they could pitch it back to the guy at the top of the key. Maybe that's a Frank Kaminsky, maybe it's a Jay Crowder, maybe it could be whoever. But whoever it is, we know based on the math right now that that's not a great shot either. Or they can try and push through the trap and take a difficult mid-range shot or something. But that's not necessarily a great shot either. So my point is, shooting is important, but also the type of shooting is important too. And the Suns are killing it on corner threes right now. But that's kind of easy to shut off if you're a defense once you know to expect it. It's definitely more difficult depending on the ball handler you're dealing with, and a ball handler with the skill of Chris Paul, it's very tough to like shut it off completely. Teams are still going to give up open corner threes to the Suns every game, and they're still going to hit them. But eventually, if this math continues the way it is, teams know. That's all I'm saying, really. Teams know. And at a certain point, you either need certain guys to wake up and hit their above the break threes. I'm looking at Cam Payne. I'm looking at Cam Johnson. Looking at Chris Paul even. Or you start to get to a discussion of, is this a need at the trade deadline? Like, it maybe the answer isn't on the roster, and we need to go address this need before the playoffs. Because definitely by the time of the playoffs, if it stays like this, teams will know.
Yeah. First thing I'll say to that is that's really good analysis. So good work on that, because that's actually really fascinating. I hadn't thought about that. Second is just shout out to Cameron Johnson, by the way, who's now shooting 34% from three. Not great, but it was real bad earlier in the season, and I think he's starting to get his shot back a little bit. I think, first of all, one of the main reasons for that is the obvious ones, which is Cameron Payne and Chris Paul, mostly Chris Paul, just not shooting their normal percentage from that area, because I'm guessing Chris Paul and Devin Booker shot the most above the break threes for the Suns last season. The ideal scenario is that Landry Shamet joins this team, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Cameron Payne continued to shoot their normal percentages, and then the paint opens up for all the cuts.
By the way, I'm glad you mentioned him, because I don't have the stat in front of me, so I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but he was the one guy who stood out. As Landry is hitting corner threes, he's also hitting the wing and above the break threes. He's doing both.
He's
doing
our best
what
three-point
he's paid
shooter
to do.
now. I don't know if you noticed that, 39.7% from three, past Mikal Bridges now, who's shooting 39% as well. Mikal's kind of struggled in the last game for the first three quarters. But yeah, I do think that that's something that will probably normalize a little bit as the season goes, and I think we'll see more of a relatively normal thing happening for the Suns there. Even Frank Kaminsky, for all he's done for the team so far this season, only shooting 33% from three. One of the shooters that when he's on the floor, that's where he shoots from. Like, he doesn't really shoot from the corner. He's going to shoot from above the break. He shot really well last season. I think that's something that will normalize. This is another example, I think, of the Suns are playing well, and they're not clicking.
They could play better.
They could play better.
We're talking about a team on a 10-game winning streak. We have every reason to be ecstatic with their level of play right now, and that's why we opened the episode with like several stats just about how awesome they are. Yeah. And yet they can play better. Like, it's just obvious watching.
And it's great. That's a great thing, right? It'd be worse if we were looking at the stats and going, oh, this isn't sustainable. They're not going to be able to keep this going. It's the other way around right now.
Like,
We're
I would
looking
be
at a team that could get a lot better.
I would be worried. I would be afraid of being that guy because I know fans don't like when you're that guy. But like if the Suns right now had won 10 games in a row shooting 50% from deep, I would be looking at that and being like, oh, fuck. You know?
That was
like,
the Knicks.
The regression is coming.
Yeah.
Like it's unavoidable. You can't keep that going forever.
That was
but
the
it's
Knicks.
the fact that they're doing that and they're only shooting okay, which is actually a really good sign.
Yeah. Early on in the season, I was looking at some stats and I was like, "Oh, this team's playing out of their mind with the Knicks." I'm like, that regression is coming, and it came. You know, if you were smart, you made some money off of it. I think we talked about it on one of our episodes. I said if you're looking to bet on the regression for the Knicks, and it happened. But yeah, for the Suns, I think they can get even better, and that's good news. And that will have to happen once they start playing more difficult teams. 3 games against the Warriors between now and Christmas Day, which will be the 3rd game against the Warriors, and they're going to have to. They're playing out of their mind right now. They look like the Warriors again.
3 games against the Warriors in the next month is nuts.
Yeah, the Suns, at the way they're playing, are not going to beat them, but that means they can get better.
We can probably wait for a future episode to like really preview that match because it's not coming in the next week. But yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, maybe get some Warriors guys on that episode.
Yeah, maybe.
Let me bring up something here.
How many do you have left? I've got one stat left.
I have one.
Okay.
Right? Do I have one? Yes, I have one because I read my clutch stat out already as part of that conversation. So here's what I have. Okay, so I wanted to look at net ratings as players because my first thought was, who's the best net rating on the Suns? I was really just curious as to who the best was for net ratings on the Suns as far as actual rotation players, because I was just wondering, it's been all over the place in previous years, but I think we sort of normalized in a way that if you had to predict who it was, it would make sense in your mind. Like last year, for the first half of the season, it was Dario Saric, which is just, it just didn't make sense. There was something happening there that just was not sustainable. Do you want to guess? Do you have any guess, or maybe you'll know who the number 1 net ratings for rotation players for the Suns is so far this season?
Is it Frank?
It's Mikal Bridges.
Oh, okay.
And doesn't that make sense? Like I feel like we have normalized in a way that it makes a lot of sense. But I think this second on the team, as far as, and for those who don't understand this, once again, the team plays the best essentially when these players are on the floor so far this season. Doesn't mean they're the best player. It just means they have that kind of effect that allows the team to win. Number 2, Jay Crowder. And I liked the Jay Crowder one because Jay Crowder, not quite been himself 3-point wise either so far this season. He's started to get a lot better, but clearly defensively he's making a difference. And after that, it goes to JaVale McGee and Frank Kaminsky, who benefit from the time playing with starters. But then after that, beyond that, and those guys are also lower minutes, including Jay Crowder, who's played significantly less minutes than even Mikal Bridges so far. After that, it goes Devin Booker, Cameron Payne, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, starts to make more sense from there. Then Jalen Smith, who's higher than Cameron Johnson. And then I thought this was funny. Abdul Nader, minus 2.3. And then down at the very, very bottom, Elfrid Payton at minus 12.7. It's bad when he's on the floor, and it's the offensive rating tanks, and the defensive rating tanks. He hasn't played in a while.
I feel, you know what? I actually feel bad for Elfrid because don't you think it's been weird? The Suns have had a couple. This is a completely different topic, but the Suns have had a couple of blowout wins, like against Memphis.
Yeah.
And Elfrid didn't even play. Like,
yeah,
they were up by 40 points with 2 minutes left, and Monty had Cam Payne out there, which it's like that's fine, but like.
Yeah, and Cam Payne hasn't quite been himself, so you kind of get him back in the rhythm.
But it's like even your backup doesn't need to be out there. They're like, that's the perfect opportunity where you have guys number 11 through 15 on the roster for a reason. And this is another thing, by the way. Where is Ish Wainwright? It used to be our call was, where is Jeff Bauer? By the way, we don't know where Jeff Bauer is. I hope he's well.
We know
he's not with the Suns.
He picked Jalen Smith and got fired.
Is that? Do you want to? That's your conspiracy theory. I don't think you've ever said that.
It's not even mine. It's a friend of ours. Shout out to the person who's probably listening that made that conspiracy theory up to us.
Do you want to explain that one a little bit? Because I don't think you've ever mentioned it.
No, it's just that Jalen Smith was picked, and then he didn't quite work out, and then shortly after that, Jeff Bauer left. And I guess there's some reading the tea leaves, putting 2 and 2 together there.
I think it's kind of believable. But you know what? I think Jeff Bauer also picked Cam Johnson, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And then you're talking about heat checks, right? For general managers, you probably earn some cred when you pick Cameron Johnson. Everyone trashes it, and then it works out. That buys you some time to pick another player. You could think that James Jones or whoever, but James Jones has to rely on his guys too. You can't scout everyone.
Anyway,
And,
to go back to the rotations thing. So yeah, Alfred didn't even play in that game, so I feel bad for him. But also, where is Ish Wainwright? Like this guy, when you are blowing teams out by 40 or 30 points,
right?
Show
us the shoulders. We haven't seen the shoulders in the jersey yet.
I want the anchor arms. I want anchor arms. We're not gonna there is literally no other. I mean, the other possibility, Mike, is that he's just been really bad in practice, which is why Monty is like, I'm not forcing him to display this to the world right now.
Well, I can
That's
say
possible.
this. He's been really great on the bench, like as a hype man on the bench. Like he really gets into it.
But then you've got guys like Chandler Hutchinson too, and it's like I'm not really a fan of Chandler Hutchinson's game. Like I don't really expect anything of him, but he's played NBA minutes before, and so with him too, it's like, well, why give him 4 or 5 minutes at the end of a blowout? It's not not that big of an ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I were those guys, I would be sitting there thinking, well, what the hell? What's the point of me being on a great team if I'm not going to at least get the garbage time minutes? But anyway.
Well, here's something to add to this net rating. By the way, net rating for individual players is not it's not a great stat. It's fine. It's just, it is what it is. But I did think it was something that has been used to sort of get at Devin Booker in the past. They kind of look at the net rating while he's on the floor and they're like, why are they getting beat when he's on the floor? Well, he's playing with a bunch of garbage players. That whole conversation that we've all had for a long time as Suns fans. But in the entire NBA, for players that are playing over 30 minutes per game, Mikal Bridges is 8th in the NBA for net rating. Devin Booker is 10th. So it's kind of nice to look at those leaderboards, if you will, for net rating and see two Suns players in those leaderboards and say, yeah, those guys are really making a huge difference. And if you watch the season so far, it's interesting to see the difference between people who have really paid close attention to the Suns and people who are looking at Devin Booker's averages and talking about how he's played. Devin Booker has done a lot for this team, especially lately, as far as dragging them to some of these victories in this win streak, whether it be in the last Mavs game on Wednesday night, which we've seen, or other times when he just is vital for the team at important moments. And then, of course, Mikal Bridges as well, whose stats are sort of up across the board outside of shooting percentages. These guys have made massive differences. Well, Chris Paul has been incredible as far as passing the ball, but has struggled as far as shooting so far this season compared to his normal self.
I think this is a good spot for me to transition because actually my stat is a net rating stat as well, and then I think we're done for the day, right?
Yep.
Okay, this is a team net rating stat, and you talk about Devin Booker dragging us to victory. So like I said before, Chris Paul and Devin Booker, when they play together, Suns play really well. Mm-hmm. When one of Chris Paul or Devin Booker is on the floor, they play relatively well. But I don't want to focus on any of those cases. I want to focus on the last case, just real quick, just to show when neither guy is on the floor. And this is the case with the smallest sample size. It's only been a total of around 80-something minutes, so it's an average of about 6 minutes per game that we get where neither Chris Paul nor Devin Booker is on the floor. But in those 6 minutes per game so far, they've got a net rating of minus 1.1, which is not bad. It's just barely being outscored. The concerning thing, I mean, it's not good either, you know what I mean? But it's not super worrying. The concerning thing is a 91.8 offensive rating. And again, we'll say one more time, the way that works, it's on a per 100 possession basis, which is basically the equivalent of one full game. So a team that has a 91.8 offensive rating, that's basically saying if you extrapolate it out and played those same players for the entire game, they would score on average about 92 points, which is a really bad offense. It's really bad. And if you look at the second unit right now, on the one hand, I think it is obvious to say, and it is true of basically every team in the league, the offense looks worse when you take the worst players out of the equation. We know that. But last year, the bench was pretty damn good. The bench was really damn good sometimes. Mm-hmm. And this year, we've struggled to get campaign going. Cam Johnson has been better of late, but again, iffy. Really iffy with his percentages. Nader, I don't even know what to say. JaVale, for his credit, has been great. but I think has also proven that he's not like a go-to offensive weapon. Like, you can't run the second unit offense through JaVale pick and rolls exactly. You'll get some of them, but it's not the most surefire strategy. And then you've got Shamet, who I think has woke up recently. But again, just kind of give me your quick vibe check before we get out of here on the second unit right now, because I keep thinking about this, and here's why I'm thinking about it specifically. To this point, I think this is going to become really relevant when we preview the game against the Warriors, by the way. The biggest thing that I have felt like the Suns roster is missing, where it's like, okay, go out and get me this at the deadline and I'll feel better about our chances of really winning a championship, or getting to the finals again, is that Torrey Craig player. Like, I've really missed having a Torrey Craig player who can slide up to the 5, is versatile, can guard multiple positions and all that. But the more I watch the bench struggle, the more I'm wondering, is the bench really enough? Is there a need to sacrifice whatever remaining few assets you have? And I think even like scraping a package together would be tough. But how long can Cam Payne and Cam Johnson kind of struggle before you start to think about pulling the trigger on, like, okay, let's get like a 6th or 7th man type guy who just puts the ball in the basket off the bench? Because so far we don't really have that in a good way. What do you think?
I'm not worried about it for a couple of reasons. I think that DeAndre Ayton's injury screwed up the bench rotations a little bit in a way that I think affected the chemistry of the bench, because, and here's what I looked up, the full bench lineup, the entire bench with JaVale McGee and not Frank Kaminsky, is actually plus 12.2 so far this season in a very small amount of minutes, just 26 minutes so far this season. One, they don't play a lot every game. You said 6 minutes a game without Chris Paul and Devin Booker on the floor. Some of those have come in blowouts where they're just, other guys are playing for extended stretches. But some of those comes when Monty has put full bench lineups on the floor. With Frank Kaminsky, with Jalen Smith instead of JaVale, those lineups are getting killed. They're not doing well so far. So I think that's affected. Mm-hmm.
Step one, don't play Jalen Smith.
Don't play Jalen Smith. That'll help a lot.
I think we knew that,
And for whatever reason, Frank Kaminsky has much, much, much better chemistry with Devin Booker and Chris Paul on the floor. I think that Cameron Payne and JaVale McGee, coming out of training camp, they specifically talked about working on their chemistry in training camp and focusing on those two playing together. And we just haven't seen enough of it. Like, full bench lineups, just 26 minutes, just with Cameron Payne and JaVale McGee. Cameron Payne also injured for an extended stretch. By the way, if Elfrid Payton is in those minutes without Devin Booker,
that's a good point.
Chris Paul,
that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, that makes a major effect on it. So when I
that
looked
is
up,
something I didn't think about for sure.
Yeah, when I looked at full bench lineups, the full bench, the ones that we were excited about, when including Nader, by the way, that's included in these minutes, the ones that we were excited about coming into the season, they've played well as a unit. And the other reason I'm not super worried about it is we just don't play a lot of minutes without Chris Paul and Devin Booker on the floor. And as the games get really more important, that will go down even more. So I'm actually excited to see more chemistry from the bench going forward, because plus 12.2, the small sample size, obviously 26 minutes, but plus 12.2 it's nothing to bark at. That's actually really good. And I think just from an eye test perspective, the chemistry between JaVale McGee and Cameron Payne has been really good so far this season. Payne, not great at lobs last season, has become a lot better at them so far this season.
One thing I wanted to point out, and this will really be my last stat for the game because I don't have like a detailed analysis here, or stat for the day. But if you just look at the per 36 numbers and go down the line of this team right now, JaVale McGee is in second at 21.4 points per 36. That's like, he's averaging 21, 15, 2.5 blocks, crazy numbers. Frank Kaminsky is third at 19. DeAndre Ayton is fourth at 18.7. So for all the criticisms about feed Ayton, this offense neglects bigs, whatever, it's kind of just a lie. Like look at that.
Yeah, it always has been,
maybe always has been. Yeah. But particularly when you look at the numbers this year, it's Devin Booker scoring the most points, and then on a permanent basis, JaVale, Frank, DeAndre, and then it's Cam Payne, and then it's Elfrid Payton, Chris Paul, Shamet, Bridges, like Jay Crowder and Cam Johnson are way down. It's not like the shooters are being favored really at all. The bigs, the rolling bigs, is kind of like the first, maybe other than like a Devin Booker getting to a spot, hit a mid-range shot. That other pick and roll offense is kind of like the main ingredient to the Suns offense right now.
Yep.
So
Yep.
those guys are definitely being fed adequately. All three of them.
You don't get Chris Paul to not pass to big men. That's like one of his biggest skills. And I think that we've seen that so far in the Suns. The biggest takeaway for me is that this team has won 10 in a row. One of the best teams in the NBA so far. One, to people listening, who cares if people are talking about the Suns? Just listen to our podcast. We'll talk about them. And
But
two, they could play better. That's the main thing. They could play better, and they will, I think.
Okay, so who cares if people talk about the Suns? However, I understand where it comes from. They will start talking about the Suns if you keep winning one or two more. This episode is coming out. You're probably listening to this. You might be listening to this after the Mavs game on Friday, in which case I hope they win tomorrow. Because if they beat healthy Luka on ESPN primetime tomorrow and extend it to 11, I promise you the feature pieces about what's going on with the Suns are going to start coming out on Monday of the following week. I promise.
Yes. Giving Chris Paul all of the credit, I'm sure. All right. We'll be back next week. No Patreon episode this week. I'm sorry. Being sick kind of threw off our schedule there. But we'll be back to our regular schedule next week now that I'm feeling better, assuming no other surprises. Appreciate everybody for listening. We'll be back soon.